On today's show, 3 questions. Number 1, what's the update on inflation? Number 2, is the IRS coming for you? And number 3, I love Taylor Swift. Let's go. Welcome to Dentist Money's 2 cents, where we help dentists navigate all the noise. I'm Matt.
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Rabih.
Yeah, you are. We're back.
Is.
We're back post-summit, first 2 cents post-summit. I enjoyed the stage, but I also enjoy seeing your cute little faces on these boxes as well. So
it's a lot less awkward. Everybody got really quiet when we started, and I was like, oh man, I don't like this.
It took us a couple minutes to warm up because we literally started. First, there was like a cheer, which was awesome. And then like everyone went quiet. And I was like, no, please talk. Like, go ahead. Please talk amongst yourselves. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. And then it was fine. It worked out.
Yeah, then we got used to it, and everybody was like, ignore them.
Ignore them. We don't care. Perfect. Speaking of that, though, really quick, let's give a freaking shout out to Studi, Becky, and Michelle, our incredible marketing team. It's pretty unbelievable that we put out a 2 cents during the summit. Michelle went back to her room and edited that show right after we did it during the most chaotic 3 days of DA history.
Yes.
I just shout out to them. It was amazing that they did that.
Yeah, they were incredible. Cool. Becky did DJ the whole weekend. Shout out to DJ Bex.
DJ Bex. She was on that soundboard the whole time. It was amazing.
Yeah.
What a fun time. Okay, let's jump in. Rabih, what's the update on inflation?
Yes. So actually, I had a mini bet in my mind because yesterday there was a presidential debate, but also this morning was the core inflation report. And I was like, which one will the market react to? Which one is more important to the market? And drum roll, it was inflation.
Oh,
they
weird.
did not care about the presidential debate. So we're focusing on inflation for today. And
everyone's so obsessed with inflation.
Yep.
I actually want to go back to the debate and see how many times, count how many times they said the word inflation. Because I think it's
turn it into a drinking game.
I was just
every time they say inflation, take a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be obliterated in the first 5 minutes.
It's so true.
So we've been usually reporting on the CPI simply because the data for the CPI for the month that we're in comes 2 weeks before the data for the PCE. But the PCE is the preferred Fed metric. And we've covered this a lot, but just to refresh your memories, the CPI is just a basket of goods. And it's stagnant. It does not change from month to month. They just look at it, and usually they are household items that we're all going to be buying, like food and beverages and like energy and like medical expenses, etc., etc. The PCE is also a basket of good. However, the only difference between it and the CPI is that it adjusts every month to accommodate for consumer behavior, where if something gets more expensive, I would switch to something else. So for example, if the CPI had steaks in it and steaks became really, really expensive, those will stay reflected in the CPI as an index and will go up and down. However, the PCE for a certain couple of months might switch out steak and put chicken or fish because the
pork chops.
Or pork chops, yeah, sorry. So the normal behavior,
chicken fried steak.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Mac and cheese all day. So
there you go.
So the idea here, they just want to be a better reflection of a human behavior, where we would substitute when some goods are out of our budget vis-a-vis other ones. So the Fed said our key metric is the core PCE. So it's the PCE, however, excluding food and energy. So we're looking at shelter and a bunch of other commodities. And this is the number that they want to drop down to 2%. When they say 2% inflation, they're not talking about CPI. CPI might be running at 4 or 5%. If the PCE is at 2, core PCE is 2, the Fed is content. So let's just put that in mind. And the core PCE data for June came in this morning. And they're good. They went down. They went down. So, and that's why the market kind of broke an all-time high at the open this morning. So what I was going to say is that the core PCE prices have been stagnant for a couple of months. So in January, they were around 2.9 something. And then February and March, they were like 2.83, 2.79. So around 2.8. Even in April, 2.8. And we just broke down that level that's been stagnant, and we are at 2.57. This was the news. Oh, we dropped from 2.8 to 2.6. This is a really good trajectory. It matches the trajectory of the CPI. And if you think about it, we're only 0.6 away from the target where the Fed wants to be inflation-wise. We've been talking about GDP growth, unemployment growth, and inflation. We said the GDP is above 2%. It looks really good. Thank you, American consumer. We said unemployment rate reached 4%, which is where they wanted it to be. Let's hope it does not go above that. And the last thing on their checklist is inflation dropping down to 2%. We're at 2.6. We're 0.6% away. What I wanted to look at, and I found super interesting, is like how much of the 0.6 that is still there is going to be dependent on actual inflation coming down versus just the base effect doing its job. And I wanted to look at what the core PCE inflation has been in the previous couple of months, and actually 12 months ago. So when we are looking at the data year over year, will it actually be jumping lower? So
it's so funny how Rabih speaks for the people, because I know everyone out there is thinking the same thing, like wondering the same thing. Everyone's had these same thoughts. Like, I wonder what the base rate effect is impacting Every dentist is in the chair right now, knuckle deep, stressing out as they're fixing.
Woke up in the middle of the night.
During the summit, we had a bunch of clients come and chat with me. They know themselves. We love them all, and they were like you're so nerdy on the podcast, and you come up with those statistics. And I told them all the same thing. I'm hoping I can keep talking about this stuff until I convert you all to becoming nerds like me.
Yeah.
So this is all part of my master plan.
Rabih is our favorite, most lovable nerd at DA. We love him.
Thank you. So now we're in June 2024. Let's look at what core PCE was in June 2023, because next month it's going to be using that number as the denominator in our ratio. And do you guys have any guess? Right now we're at 2.5. Do you have any guess what inflation was in June 2023, the core PCE? Oh. It was down, but a decent number.
It's down now from where it was?
Yeah, it is down.
Oh, man. Let's go with 3.7.
Okay. It was actually 4.2.
Oh, Victoria wins.
You are very close. But what's interesting is that since June 2023 till end of May end of May 2024, it dropped from 4.2 to 2.57, which is a 50% drop. So as we roll down and we move from June, which is, we said 4.2, to July 4.1, all the way to December 2023, where we started the year. In December, we were at 2.9. So you've got the next 6 months where it drops 50%, and that denominator is going to be dropping 50%. This means that you don't really need a lot of progress on actual inflation dropping down for the number to look closer to 2% and approaching 2% even further. So for the next 6 months, we're going to see actually inflation trending in the right direction faster than we have for the past couple of months. This is good. And this will stir, I'm sure it'll stir some questioning in the markets, so when is the Fed gonna cut rates? Because it is trending toward 2%, it's trending at a faster rate. But this is all just the math working out. So it's exciting.
Very exciting. I'm jacked up. I'm jacked up on this Friday. Rabih always getting me going on this inflation. I'm like, man, what else am I going to do this weekend that's as exciting as hearing about core PCE dropping by 50%? I have no idea.
There really isn't anything else.
There's nothing else now that I can do this weekend. No, what was I going to say? I got so excited. Rabih. So one thing I've been reading about, I'm not as big of a nerd as you, but I do enjoy reading about this stuff. The services, I think, is still kind of the issue right now. From everything I've seen, goods like actual goods have dropped significantly. But from what I've been reading, the services aspect of the economy still very much, I shouldn't say the issue, but where the stickiness of prices are. Is that kind of what we're still seeing?
That is very accurate, because goods, most of their price depends on the commodity they come from. But services, their commodity, their source of value comes from employees. And the job market was still a little bit tight, although now unemployment rate is 4%, but there are still more jobs than people can fill up. And the fact that there's this imbalance in the labor market is going to put upward pressure on services, but it is dissipating away.
Got it. And I would imagine right now, as we've talked so much on this show, and you just mentioned it, now the Fed is sitting here trying to thread another needle around timing of reducing rates. Because just like on the flip side, when this happened, where inflation went, we had, I wouldn't call it runaway, but like there was all that talk of like, okay, is this inflation transitory or is it not? And that was such a debate for so long. And a lot of people criticized the Fed at that time, if we remember, that they waited too long.
Yes.
Like they kept saying transitory. And then it was like, oh, crap, it's not transitory. Now we got to do something. I'd imagine they're feeling that pressure now on the downward side of like how to do this or the timing of this. Because if they wait too long, all of a sudden recession happens. I'd imagine.
100%. Recession happens. So the inflation might be dropping down. Unemployment might be sticking up and be like, well, those numbers are heading in, a slowdown trajectory. They're hinting that a slowdown in the economy is happening, but the GDP is still growing above the long-term average. So where do we stand? I think the nail on the coffin would be for the Fed, if they are data dependent, they're just looking at the data, is like when the not only 2 out of 3, but 3 out of 3, GDP, unemployment, and inflation all head in the negative direction. But it does not seem the case. Actually, funny you mentioned this, because today also with the core PCE, we got the Michigan consumer sentiment for June, and it is actually it's been the same since last year, in between the 60s and the 70s as a value. And just to tell you how to read that index, if it's above 50, it means the consumers are very bullish, and if it's below 50, they are bearish. So the consumers are still willing to spend.
And sorry, where'd it come in?
The exact number is 68.
Oh. So strong to quite strong.
Quite strong above 50. So the consumers are still willing to spend. So even if, inflation hits the 2% and unemployment is at 4%, the Fed can still look at one of the three and say, but the GDP is strong because the consumers are still spending. So we'll see how it will pan out.
Got it. How much is the Fed, they're data dependent, as you've said. Where, based on track record, where do they find this balance of like being anticipating versus just straight up reacting? Right.
Well, the Fed's track record has been bad. Like the Fed always miscalculates where the economy is going to be, and they have to react at the end of the day. But I'd say it's a mix of both. They are waiting on the data for validation, but they are working in an anticipatory manner, because they increased a bunch of interest rates and they decided to pause at 5.5% while inflation was still ticking higher. But they were saying, hey, monetary policy works with a lag. We're going to pause now and see whether it starts going down. And it did start going down. So they have a little bit of science to back them up, being preemptive in their approach. But usually, and most of the time, whether it's the government or the Fed, their job is to respond and put down fires, especially like when a crisis happens, a recession hits, a pandemic, or inflation.
Yeah. And by the way, their track record is bad because this is really hard.
100%.
So think about that when it comes to people that are out there asking questions around like, can we try to time the market? No, because even the Fed, with all the data, all the PhDs, all the most up-to-date resources and tools in their tool belt, they have a bad track record with this because it's really hard. Obviously, we're talking economy. Market is a different thing, but very much related. Last thing on this, Rabih, and Victoria, I want to throw it to you if you have any questions or thoughts. But you mentioned all-time highs this morning again. I think that's the 34th this year, 34th or 5th time.
I'm not counting, but good observation.
Yeah. Well, I just saw this.
You just impressed Rabih.
Oh my gosh!
Welcome, fellow nerd.
Yeah, thank you. Oh
You're in, Matt.
Guys, I feel like Robbie's rubbing off on me. All right, Rabih, you can take off. We don't need you anymore. It's just me. I just saw this in an article I think last week. We were 33 all-time highs. So I think this is either 34 or 35. We just keep breaking through that. We just keep going. But you've talked about this, right? Of like people get so nervous of all-time highs, and they're like, this must mean something bad. It's like, actually, no, an all-time high is actually quite bullish.
Yes.
And we're seeing that right now. So, Victoria, any thoughts, comments, questions for me? For any questions from me now that I've taken over for Rabih?
Not me checking my portfolio on the side.
She's like,
I'm like,
are we at all-time highs?
Oh yeah, it's looking pretty good. Thank you, Rabih. Appreciate
Solid.
that. Thanks for the returns.
My dozens of dollars are looking
My
great.
dozens of dollars. No, just shout out Rabih. Thanks for making the markets move in our direction.
Seriously, Rabih is just a market mover, kingmaker. Love it. So, okay, Rabih, any other final thoughts on that? Awesome. Okay, great update as always. We are the weekly inflation checker at this point, inflation tracker. Okay, next, is the IRS coming for you? Is that a scary enough question?
I think we should make it scarier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how. We're working on our sensationalistic questions and headlines. Okay, so this is something I've been looking at the last few weeks around multiple articles that have come out about this, around specifically what they're calling kind of a surge in this specific penalty from the IRS. And what it is penalty for underpayment for taxes. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to kind of just level set, give some basics around taxes and how this generally works, because I think there's a huge misconception on taxes, specifically for dentists, practice owners who are required to pay quarterly payments. So I thought this was a good chance to kind of level set. But I want to give you just a couple of figures here to give you kind of an understanding of what this kind of surge in this underpayment penalty is. So I guess to kind of give a definition, shout out to Victoria, who's always telling me to back up and like level set and give an explanation. So the government requires you, to pay your taxes as you go, as you're making money, right?
Wait, you guys actually pay your taxes?
Well, sometimes, most of the time. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. Most people pay their taxes through their W-2. So if you're an employee, you just pay your taxes throughout the year. If you have any other income from other places, let's say you're an employee, but then you do real estate or you have a side gig or whatever, you're supposed to be paying payments along the way. But in most cases, people are required to pay up to 90% of their taxes by the deadline, right? Usually by the end of the year. And if you don't, and we'll get the other, we'll explain here in a moment the other ways as like a practice owner. There's some what's called safe harbor. We'll hit this in a second. But if you don't pay that 90%, you are hit with underpayment penalties. So to give you some data on this, in 2023, the average penalty for underpayment was $500, extra penalty. You might think, okay, $500, not a huge deal. That's up though from $150 from the year before. So it's increasing. The other thing is the total amount of people impacted by this penalty went from 12 million in 2022 to 14 million in 2023. So it's increasing. And just to give you even global numbers here, this is kind of mind-blowing. In 2023, the amount of penalties assessed rose to $7 billion from $1.8 billion in 2022. So the amount of penalties being assessed on this is kind of crazy. And the key reason is what we're talking about. It's rates. Interest rates. So what happens is if you are not on top of this and you are assessed this penalty, it immediately interest begins accruing on this. The government basically says, you owe us money, whatever your penalty is, it starts to accrue interest. In 2022, the underpayment or the interest rate on underpayment was at an all-time low at 3%. It is currently now at 8%. So that's a huge that is the reason why rates being up, the government's charging you more based on the interest. So I'm going to stop there for a second, get thoughts, comments, questions on any of this.
That makes sense. I was wondering why they decided to lay down the law. I'm like, did they just like fire their whole squad and actually get good employees?
Yeah. No, the IRS is still very understaffed. There was that big story of they hired 80,000 people, right? What they didn't talk about a lot is they had lost like 50,000 to retirement and like people moving on. So they're still very much understaffed, no question. I actually saw another article that said 2/3 of calls to the IRS right now go unanswered. because they're so understaffed. So that's a whole other side story.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so something to very much be aware of in regards to these underpayment penalties. So how this affects dentists specifically. Most dentists, especially if you're a practice owner, fall under what's called safe harbor rules. So there's two ways dentists pay themselves in a practice, as we all know. You're paying yourself through a W-2, assuming that your tax is an S Corp. Again, most of our dentists are. So you're paying yourself W-2. So you're going to pay your taxes through that W-2, right? But then you have business income and you have to pay yourself quarterly payments. Here's where dentists get in trouble with this. And this is where it is so I'll kind of tell you right now, here's kind of the main point of this. You have to have a proactive CPA. You have to have a proactive CPA who is going to do planning with you, who's going to track your quarterlies on a regular basis. I just talked to a client this week who was hit with a $54,000 tax surprise because they weren't tracking his quarterlies proactively enough.
Oh, man.
And his CPA was just like, oh, you grew way more than we thought. And here's a tax bill. And part of that was penalty. So this happens all the time. And I think a lot of times dentists think a good CPA should, like, the difference between a good CPA and a bad CPA is the good CPA is the one who helps me avoid taxes more than the bad one, or they have some secrets. No, that is not true. All these CPAs pretty much, if they're worth anything, know all the tax avoidance strategies. We know the tax avoidance strategies for the most part. A good CPA is someone who's going to be organized and proactive in helping you stay on top of this. That's the biggest thing. And also, number one, really more than anything, is going to communicate with you throughout the year. That's the biggest thing. So let me just hit this really quick. I know this is as exciting as inflation, but it is critical. So most dentists fall under what's called safe harbor. So if you make under, if you're a practice owner and you make under $150,000, so you can fall under a specific rule that you just have to pay 100% of your prior year income by the deadline, and it's generally January 15th of the following year. So again, you make $150,000 or less, you can pay
in W-2.
Well, just in income.
Okay.
As long as you're paying 100% of your prior year income, you won't be hit with penalties.
Okay.
But most practice owners are going to be making more than that.
That's
right? More than 150,000.
Right.
So under that rule, you have to pay 110% of your prior year income by the deadline.
And then no penalties.
And then you wouldn't have any penalties. Where dentists get in trouble with this, even if they fall under safe harbor, is you grow way more than you think or than you're tracking. And your CPA is not being proactive. They're not communicating with you. And by the way, this is quarterly. So it's not an annual thing. It's hitting you quarterly. So this is why it's so critical to have a very solid CPA that's collaborating with you, that's communicating with you. And by the way, you have to be on top of this too. Because I've talked to CPAs who have said, I'm giving their vouchers, I'm communicating via email, I'm telling them you got to increase your quarterly by X amount. Because again, it's quarter by quarter. And the dentist doesn't do it and then gets mad at the CPA. So this is a two-way street. You've got to be aware of it.
Yeah, they got to take accountability on both sides.
Exactly. You've got to both be involved. But so again, this is more of just like I'd say kind of a public service announcement that this is becoming more critical with rates being where they're at. The penalties are becoming more significant specifically because of rates. And this is just something to be aware of. Be tracking your P&L, be really proactive with your advisor, be really proactive with or have an advisor and a CPA that are proactive with you, I should say. So you're on top of this. If you're seeing immense growth quarter by quarter, you've got to be on top of this with your quarterly payments, because most people out there listening, if they're a practice owner, you're making more than 150 grand and you've got to be hitting that 110% or more of your year of the year before, and just be on top of this. So I'm going to leave it there. And Victoria, you got something.
It just is becoming more expensive to mess this up.
Yes.
You know, like, because I also know a lot of dentists, yeah, it's hard to pay a really good CPA, but at this point, it is very much worth it to, go to a better CPA, pay an increase in their fees to make sure that you don't get hit with something like this. Because we see that all the time, like somebody who is working with not as great of a CPA or a CPA with great potential, let's just say.
Yep.
And it's so incredibly expensive to get it wrong. And we've seen some really nasty cases of that. And it's worth it. So worth it from, like a monetary perspective, but also just your peace of mind. Cause like just seeing a dentist be so freaking stressed out and like about taxes and how much like kind of coming back from all the mistakes, it's not freaking worth it. It's really not.
Totally. It's so true. Think about this too from a psychology perspective. We talked about this at the Dentist Money Summit, right? Shout out Daniel Crosby. He was so incredible.
Oh, he's amazing.
Daniel Crosby talked about the uncertainty, right? And Rabih, you and I just talked about this in another context, but how draining and psychologically and emotionally devastating uncertainty is, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with taxes. Again, most people think I want a CPA who's going to help me pay the least amount of taxes. Like that's the sign of a quality CPA.
Yeah.
I would say actually that's not true. Again, a quality CPA is someone who's going to remove the most uncertainty for you.
Right.
My client who had this tax bill that just hit him, complete surprise, that was so much more impactful for him than if he would have known about it and spread it out throughout the year. And the CPA would have been, because now my client's sitting here being like, it's not even the tax bill. It's now this year being like, well, am I going to get hit again? It's like it increases his uncertainty now. Yeah. So now he's even that much more stressed.
Yeah,
as opposed
I've seen that too.
Yeah, so as opposed to the CPA communicating and saying, "Hey, here's the deal. There's nothing we can do about this. You've grown. We got to be proactive and pay these quarterlies, increase your quarterly, spread it out throughout the year, communicate, reduce uncertainty. Now my client's not stressed, even though the tax bill is the exact same." So that's what I would be focusing on for people when it comes to a CPA is who's going to communicate, who's going to reduce the most uncertainty for me, because everything else as far as tax avoidance, they're all going to have the same secrets. Yep. So Rabih, any thoughts?
No, I love what you said. This all speaks and goes back to the value of being organized. Organize in your communication, organize the people who work with you, whether it's an advisor or CPA. A lot of people, all they focus about is what upside can I capture from finding this tax strategy or finding this investment? But most of the profit and return is going to be made by avoiding those drops and downsides, which all it takes is being organized for. You don't need to have an advantage information-wise against other people or know a loophole to work it out. And downside is more important than upside.
So true.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because also, did Daniel Crosby talk about this? Like, yeah, it's going to feel probably pretty good that you saved yourself on taxes, but do you know what's going to hurt even more? Like the mistake, like the losses. Like, I can't remember the stat, but like losses hurt twice as more as like the upside. Yep. And so like, you know, while that might feel really good that you maybe got away with something and it worked, but it's going to hurt so much more kind of coming back from a mistake.
Yeah, he's referring to, this is very well known and studied in investment space, prospect theory, that talks about we feel losses at a clip of 2.5 times greater than we feel the gains. That's why risk management is so critical in all of this. So, okay, we've talked inflation, we've talked taxes. Like, we're literally ruining people's weekends at this point.
Now we're moving to the most boring topic, right?
Here we go. Starting a fight.
Rabih, we were on good terms.
We were feeling good. Things were flowing really well. And then Rabih's like,
so well,
Rabih thought, you know what?
I cannot believe you.
Rabih's like, you know what? We've had a streak of like being pretty nice to each other. And now I'm going to throw down. Rabih,
okay. You didn't have to choose violence today, and you just did. I'm disappointed,
really did.
Is all I'll say to that.
Victoria's doing this on her day off, and Rabih's still being mean.
I know. I rolled up for you.
She really did. Also, I hope people caught my Ron Burgundy Anchorman question at the very beginning. If you didn't, that sucks. If you did, you're my people. I love Taylor Swift? That was kind of a little joke from Anchorman.
Great movie.
Okay.
Great I'm actually excited to hear what's the topic.
I know. So we're going to jump in.
Are you, Rabih?
Are you?
I genuinely am.
We're going to finish this off with the most exciting topic, because we really did pair these. We thought, we're talking inflation, we're talking taxes. We got to bring something in that's a little bit less dry. We thought why not talk Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
So
all
Victoria.
I'll say is, Rabih, you're lucky I'm not in the office right now and I'm recording from my
She'd be
my
throwing
living
something
room.
at you. She'd be throwing something at you.
Like, we need to pause the recording. I need to barge into this office.
Yeah. So let's jump to Taylor Swift. We're going to talk Swiftonomics.
We got new word dropped. New character unlocked.
New character unlocked.
Swiftonomics or Taylornomics. I like Swiftonomics a little bit better,
I do
personally. I mean, the reality of it, you guys, is she's carrying the music industry on her back. She's carrying the U.S. economy on her back, the global economy, if you will, on her back.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's America's sweetheart. Her and Travis are, the world's couple right now. Like, they just live rent free in my mind constantly.
I believe
can't
that.
Stop. Like,
I believe that.
It's just it's a beautiful love story. So, and she deserves it. Like, after everything, whatever. This isn't a Taylor Swift.
She's going. Just cook. Let her cook.
I'll do a separate episode, just a fun one. Be like, hello, everybody in our community.
We'll do it like a Dennis Money pop culture edition.
I legit will do one on Taylor Swift because her investment portfolio is pretty insane, and people don't realize her dad is actually a financial advisor.
Yes.
And what she was actually going to her career, what she wanted to do before she became Taylor Swift singer-songwriter, she was going to be a financial advisor like her dad.
Heck yeah. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, no, you heard it here first. Soft launch. I'm going to do an episode
on Taylor Swift.
On Taylor Swift, because she actually also with cryptocurrency never got into it because she was like, these aren't secure, and she's made some really good investment decisions, and that's also why she's such an icon, because she's not just a singer-songwriter, she's an incredible businesswoman. She's amazing with her portfolio and her real estate portfolio. There's so much to her, and the haters got to stop because,
I didn't realize this segment was just going to be just Victoria going off. I don't think we realized that it was just going to be Victoria waxing.
It's because Rabih was in a defensive position. He was just like, now on to Taylor Swift. Here's the thing. That's a trigger. That's like a no-no topic for me. It
really is.
I got the stats,
I feel like I have to apologize publicly because she's arguing with us.
Yeah, so,
although we did not mean to.
Now that we're here, let's just say this. This is a weekly occurrence with Victoria in the office.
Oh, more than weekly.
Probably more than weekly.
Tell them what happened yesterday when I came into the office, what I said.
Oh, you came in and you were out of nowhere. We're just like, you know what? I'm just so grateful that I live in the same time as Taylor Swift. I'm just so grateful. And it was so genuine and so serious, and I loved it so much. So
it's so true. Because
we
were comparing her to Michael Jackson, she's just even more massive as an artist.
We're gonna have to have a talk about this. That'll be a topic for another day.
Fine.
I will say, if anyone to ever exist from a global stardom level, from a music standpoint, she has reached Michael Jackson levels for sure. But I don't think it's unequivocal. You can say she's bigger than Michael Jackson. So we'll talk later about that. Let's jump into the actual segment about Taylor Swift, the stats, and the.
I'm just saying, Rabih put me in a defensive position, and I get triggered. So clearly, that was your fault.
It's good for the ratings.
Yeah, we're doing it for the ratings.
Doing it for the spiciness. Okay, so I wrote here in my notes, and I quite literally titled this, "Some stats just in case you are still a hater."
This literally turned into just defending Taylor. Okay,
but I say this kind of jokingly, but not really. She has had such an impact on our economy. And I know, Rabih, you're talking about CPI, PCE, whatever. I think it's Taylor. Single-handedly. It's all just Taylor. My main point I'll get to in a second, but I do have to. I have one point, but I still have to share some stats just in case you're still a hater.
Okay.
If Taylor Swift were an economy, she would be bigger than 50 countries, you guys. 50. She's massive. Her opening night made more revenue than Super Bowl 57. So that's just the opening night alone. And, the Super Bowl is big, whatever.
Dude, Taylor Swift, the 50 countries thing is pretty wild. That is pretty crazy.
Yeah, she's literally like our mother, our queen. She could start her own country for real, though, and I'd move instantly. I don't care the structure.
I think a lot of women would. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. National study of concert goers. So the average spend of a concert goer is $1,300. I know people who've spent a lot more than that. I was really lucky. My concert ticket was like $170, and she was performing in Vegas where my family lives, so it actually was pretty cheap for me. But $1,300, and 91% of people said they would go again.
Wow.
And her Eras tour is the first tour to cross the $1 billion mark with a B, a capital B.
Yeah.
And she's projected to do more than $2 billion, like by the time the Eras tour is over on December 8th of this year. Sadly, she's not extending. And her net worth is now $1.3 billion.
So wild.
So I'm like, you can hate her all you want, but the stats are the stats. The numbers are the numbers. So
okay, and we're in this, so let's just hit it real quick. Are people like, here's my issue when we say, if you're going to hate her, whatever, like, I actually don't think that many people hate Taylor Swift.
Oh, they do.
Listen, let me finish. I don't think that many people hate her. I think there are haters. There's haters for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we do.
Like, you have your haters, right?
Yeah, once you get to my level, like... Once you get to Taylor and our level, like, I'm just saying, I'm totally empathetic. I get it. No, this is what we do, right? We build people up and then we tear them down. This is what we do. So I totally understand there are haters, but here's what I think is more the case. I think there are haters. I'm acknowledging that for their record. I am acknowledging there are haters, but I think the Swifties are actually more sensitive than there are haters. Like, if we're saying pendulum one way or the other, like, I'll use you as the example. You take things that are said in the office that are just like objective, neutral comments as hate. You like are so sensitive to Taylor that you'll like lose your mind. And so all I'm saying is, I think it's more perception from Swifties, the rabid Swiftie fans, that build up this idea that she's getting more hate than she actually is. Although she does get hate, but I think far more people love her than people, and the amount of love she gets from people like you and her fans is far greater than any hate she gets.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think there's like there's that on both sides. Like, there are the tinfoil hat Swifties who are like that is their life's mission, is to crack all the Easter eggs. And you don't have
like the full hat. You've got like a yarmulke, like a tinfoil yarmulke. Like, just a small little thing.
No, I'm really not the person to like sit there and I let the tinfoil
and yell
Swifties
at Rabih
cook.
on a podcast about her.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, Rabih.
I let the smart Swifties cook. Like, they're the ones like diving into the lyrics, looking at old Instagram posts and all of that. And I just listen to that content because I don't have time to do all of that. Doesn't make me less of a fan. It just makes me a different kind of fan. Yeah. So I'm not like a tinfoil hat Swiftie. And those are the folks that would like probably murder you and will do anything. But then there's also the other side where, yeah, there are like people who are unnecessarily like hating on her. I mean, she literally went dark for like a long time, and that's when she released Rabih. We don't have to get into this.
Rabih's itching. Rabih.
Well, no, the point that I want to make before Rabih talks, because this is going to connect, and I do want Rabih's input on this because he's only interested in this from like an economy and markets perspective.
Oh, this all comes down to the thing we were going to talk about. Yeah, the main point. Here we are.
But yeah, we got there. We landed this.
We landed it.
The point of this is an article was released like a couple of weeks ago, and actually, Rabih was the one who sent this to me. Oddly enough,
secret fan.
Yeah, I think Rabih. You know what? Rabih is a secret fan because he told me one day, he was just like, my favorite music video is Blank Space by Taylor Swift.
Yeah, Rabih's a fan.
He was like, come on, let's watch it. And I was like, absolutely. So we sat at my desk and watched the whole music video. And he was like, oh yeah, like, see this and what about that? And I'm like, thank you so much. So he sent me this article like a couple of weeks ago saying, was it the England Fed was delaying
the Bank of England? Yep.
Yeah, Bank of England was delaying rate cuts because of Taylor, and the U.S. also hasn't cut rates. And so my thought is like, like, Taylor Swift is single-handedly saying pause
So
to the
let's
rate
give
cuts.
some
Jerome
context.
Powell, who? Taylor Swift is in.
Oh my gosh. So let's give some context here. So Rabih, again, you did send this article. Taylor Swift or the Bank of England, I think, literally came out and said, like, it's been right. They actually, or is this speculation? But they actually came out and said they were pausing rate cuts, or they were waiting for that data to come in because of Taylor Swift.
Yeah, so the Bank of England, just like the US Federal Reserve, is data dependent, waiting to see whether they would start cutting rates sooner or later. And part of the data that they look at is consumer spending, retail spending, and how much, spending is happening in the economy. And they have noticed through the trends that every time Taylor Swift goes to a new city, other than, creating earthquakes in the stadium, she has been boosting the economy of the city that she is in with a significant amount.
Yeah, and I think she pumped LA with like $320 million.
Yeah, I've seen this.
So the policymakers are like, let's wait until this consumer shock dissipates away so we can look at more normalized data before we take it into consideration. But this usually happens. Like Christmas, they will not make a decision on Christmas Day or around Christmas spending. They will not do it on Valentine's Day, 4th of July, etc., etc. What's amazing is that an artist is now creating this phenomena about creating spikes in the data from an economic perspective, and this is what is valuable about it.
Yeah, it is all. I mean, all jokes aside, the fake. I mean, just objectively, it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable that this person, that one human can have this, like this big of an impact on economies all over the world, everywhere she goes. I saw the same thing, Victoria, that you just mentioned. She goes to these cities, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in impact from hotels and restaurants and services, and it is truly unbelievable to see in the modern era how big of an impact she has.
That we get to live in the same lifetime as this.
We get to live in the same lifetime.
Phenomenal.
And how big she's been big, right? And there's also a whole nother story, a whole nother lesson here to talk about as far as time being the secret, as we always talk about. She's been doing this since she was 12 years old. And so just think about like how much time it's actually taken her to get to this level. And then she's just reached this new level over the last couple of years even. She was always big, but she is hockey sticked in the last couple of years.
Well, and the other thing too, it's like her influence isn't just that. Like, I didn't put the stats down for this, but people's spending on concerts have gone up astronomically too, because, and I see that in my own spending. Like, I was always kind of a concert goer, but more of like a free music in the park kind of gal, and now I like definitely spend more on concerts.
You're saying the ripple effect even that she's had on other artists.
It's massive. Totally. So now like spending on concerts and entertainment and stuff like that has gone up insane. Like I'll bring the numbers at some point, but they were like astronomical. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's to make a sports analogy, it's truly like a similar, when you've got these athletes, so let's say like Michael Jordan, you've got LeBron James, Steph Curry, you've got these athletes that transcend sports, first of all, and then also have a ripple effect across their own industry.
They change the game.
Yeah. They change the game and not on and off the court. And I think Taylor Swift has done the same thing.
Taylor changed the NFL.
Oh, no.
Oh boy. Oh boy. No, it's true though. Again, you get to the certain level and you have a ripple effect and an impact beyond just your own craft, your own like, again, now she is impacting other artists and the amount of money they can make because of what you're saying. Now more people are going to concerts and she's changing the game of how all that works. So
yeah, like I said, she's carrying the music industry on her back and the global economy on her back. Look at that.
Look at that. Weird. Okay. Rabih, I'm going to give you a chance. Any final words? And then we got to let Victoria get final word on anything.
Careful, Rabih.
Okay. Rabih's like, I'm not saying anything. Okay, Victoria, any final words on Taylor Swift?
No,
or anything?
Just thank you for letting me go off on my favorite artist. Taylor Sutterfield in our office the other day was just like, Victoria, if you were given, what did he say? Like $10 million and you can't listen to Taylor Swift at all anymore for the rest of your life. I was like, absolutely not.
It started with $1 million.
It started with $1 million.
I think he went up to 10 and yeah. That's a whole other topic too. We'll do
No.
like what you would for everyone. Like we do a panel discussion. Like how much money would it take to give up something that you love?
Ooh, we should do a panel with some like questions
that.
like this. Yeah. I like it.
So, all right, we've talked inflation, we've talked taxes, and we've talked Taylor Swift.
And the answer to the question is your question.
What, I love Taylor Swift? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Let's go.
I'm just amazed by her more than anything, and she makes great music. I fully admit it. Okay, Rabih, Victoria, thank you as always. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. That was our 2 cents. Until next time, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.